This is Bengals Central Podcast, keeping you up to date on all the Bengals news. Brought to you by ProFootballCentral.com. And now, here are your hosts, Sean O'Donnell and Chris Rowling.
Welcome to the Bengals Central Podcast, found exclusively on the Pro Football Central Radio Network and brought to you by Onnit.com, delivering everything you need to thrive. And Big Frog custom t-shirts in Cincinnati, Ohio at bigfrog.com/Cincinnati. I'm your host, Sean O'Donnell, and with me as always, my co-host, Chris Rowling. Chris, we have a jam-packed show today, and we're now halfway through the preseason with yet another episode of HBO's Hard Knocks in the books. And we got a little more insight into this 2013 Bengals squad. We'll be getting to all of that in just a bit, but I've got to say, I'm really excited about our guest this week.
So am I, Sean. We have former NFL scout and current GM of our Labs Scouting Services, Dan Shonka, on the line later to give us some insight into the Bengals 2013 rookie class. And we'll also be talking to Cincinnati Bengals rookie running back Giovani Bernard later in the show, so make sure you stick around for that.
Absolutely. Let's right into recapping last week's events. In week 2 of the preseason, the Bengals took on the Tennessee Titans for their first home game of the preseason. And, there were a couple of takeaways from the game, some good, some bad, so let's go ahead and get right into it. First off, as far as the offensive side goes, despite some early first drive inconsistencies, there were some key players of the offense that really shined against the Titans. For one was Giovani Bernard. He really showed a knack to make the most out of whatever hole was given to him in the trenches by the offensive line. He has this great ability to really make himself small and squeeze through whatever opening he can find to gain positive yards. And he's a little more tougher to take down than I originally thought. He did a fantastic job of using his vision, finding open running lanes, and really had a great evening rushing the football. And he even added a terrific reception, a fingertip grab down the sidelines, which then he broke a tackle and gained 22 yards from Andy Dalton. So, he's really starting to look as advertised, and it's really easy to start to get excited about what he's bringing to the table this coming season. Speaking of the man that threw him the ball, Andy Dalton looked great as well. He had a terrific stat line, 9 of 14 for 115 yards and a score for 113 passer rating. I mean, that's the kind of numbers that you really want to see out of Andy Dalton. And the thing is that he's looking more like a leader on the field as well. He was visibly frustrated either by himself or, maybe a miscommunication with a teammate here and there because, this guy looks like he's striving to perfection. And aside from, visibly being a leader, he's throwing the ball a lot better. I mean, the 2-yard fade route to Mohamed Sanu in the end zone for his touchdown was just a thing of beauty in my mind. He dropped it in perfectly. So, good things coming from those two players. Chris, what's your take on these offensive playmakers for Cincinnati?
Well, like I said last week, I needed to really see Gio stop dancing in the backfield and just get up the field. And like you said, he did that. And really, the highlight for me was his catch out of the backfield. That's huge, and that's what we needed to see. And that's what the team needed moving forward. Great in that regard, especially against the first-team defense. Dalton, you hit the nail on the head. Not really much to add there. He's sharp, and he really, not the best of competition. The Tennessee Titans struggled last year, didn't make a lot of upgrades this year in my mind. But again, he was consistent, and he spread the ball around and did what he had to do. But honestly, for me, the offensive player that was really the highlight of the game was wide receiver Mohamed Sanu. As much as the tight ends get credit for being great red zone threats and things of that nature, you have to remember Sanu's 4 touchdowns last year came in the red zone. And against the Titans, the Bengals lined up in a 2 tight end set, and Dalton immediately went to Sanu after he shook off press coverage from a corner and caught a 2-yard touchdown after a beautifully thrown ball from Andy Dalton. So for me, Sanu is healthy again, and he's already seemingly one of Dalton's favorite targets. Dalton looked to him immediately rather than the 2 tight ends on the field, and that speaks a lot to what I think we're going to see next season with Sanu's role and his statistical output, especially in the red zone, which is huge for a team that has consistently in the past couple of seasons struggled in the red zone and had to settle for field goals. So for me, Sanu is the player to watch. Sean, do you have anything to add to Sanu's excellent game?
Only that I think you're absolutely dead on, Chris. I like the analysis with Sanu. I think he's going to be a great weapon for Andy Dalton as a security blanket and also as a red zone threat. He's going to be a great possession receiver. I know we get this comparison a lot, but really, you can compare the guy to a TJ Houshmandzadeh. He's got solid hands. He uses his muscular body to really block out defenders and make the most out of every single possession. So the future looks good for the Bengals offense with Mohamed Sanu, and it's great that Andy Dalton can rely on him even without A.J. Green on the field. On the downside of the offensive side of the ball, the offensive line seemed to struggle a little bit. They buckled a little too frequently and a little too quickly for my liking while Andy Dalton, and even when John Skelton took the field for a little bit. Andy Dalton was sacked once, which resulted in a fumble and a turnover, but the amount of times that he was taking hits really don't bode well for the Bengals' first-team offense. You really can't have your possible franchise quarterback, dare I say, taking that amount of hits, especially in a preseason game. I know Andrew Whitworth wasn't on the field, but still, the line has been together for over a year now. They really need to show that they've gelled enough to be able to stand up in the trenches and take care of business in pass protection. Dalton was sacked way too many times last year, and I get that sometimes he held on to the ball a little too long, but the offensive line really does need to buckle down and show that they can hold up against solid defensive lines, because remember, in the AFC North, there's some pretty scary pass rushes that the other three teams happen to have for this season. So that's it for the offensive side of the ball. Chris, why don't you take us into some insight on the first-team defense?
Yeah, I wanted to go ahead and focus on these guys rather than talk offensive line, because it was a pretty disappointing performance against Tennessee. As well as the offense played and as well as the hype around the offense is rightfully blowing up, the defense, which we're used to traditionally seeing keep the offense in games, was really disappointing. The first-team defense has yet to record a sack, and that's a bit alarming. Granted, Carlos Dunlap has been struggling with injuries. Michael Johnson wasn't active against the Titans, but, out of the blue, the Titans averaged 4.3 yards per carry against the Bengals in this preseason matchup. Chris Johnson had 30 yards on only 7 carries. Sean Green had 29 yards on 6 carries. And Jake Locker ended up going 12 of 20 for 116 yards. And, take away a few missed field goals from Tennessee, and this game's a lot closer than most want to admit. Granted, starters would be in the entire game if it were the regular season. But the point is, the first-team defense was a very, very mixed bag, and it's hard to defend. It's the 4-3 in Cincinnati under Zimmer traditionally takes a bend but don't break approach, and we saw that. But the averages were a bit alarming because, granted, a couple starters were out. The Tennessee Titans are not a top-caliber team. The offensive line, like we said last week, is potentially majorly upgraded with Levitre and rookie Chance Warmack in their run blocking. So, that's a good meter for how the Bengals could play against top offensive lines. And, we have a ways to go still before the regular season, but to me, the iffy performance in a game that probably should have been a lot closer against what I consider to not be top quality opposition it's a bit of an alarm. It's kind of concerning for Mike Zimmer's defense. Sean, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you right there about the defense. And I get you that, they do play that whole bend, don't break style of defense. But to tell you the truth, this was a 6th-ranked defense from a year ago, and to have a Titans team with, and no disrespect to the Titans, but kind of a lack of talent on the offensive side of the ball right now and a lackluster quarterback, the Bengals gave up a tremendous amount of yardage, even if they didn't give up a lot of points. And that's something that really needs to be rectified. And a really good test, and we'll get to it later, is going to be against the Dallas Cowboys next week, who run more of a high-octane offense than the Titans do. And, Chris, I think the stat that you gave about Sean Green's rushing yards really says it all. You really don't need a guy like Sean Green to be busting off that kind of yardage against what's supposed to be a very stout run defense. So we'll see what they have in store for us next week, but they definitely need to step up a little bit. One guy, I've got to say, who was my defensive MVP for the Titans game, and this may come as a surprise, is middle linebacker Ray Maualuga. And I'm sure I'm getting some moans and groans out there right now, but Ray Maualuga actually had a very solid game. He showed some consistency, actually, in his open field tackling and also in pass coverage, which is obviously not his forte. But, you know, one-on-one, a certain play against Chris Johnson, where Johnson was trying to get to the edge, Maualuga took a perfect angle and showed a textbook tackle while wrapping up Chris Johnson around both of his legs. Then later on, Maualuga was assigned to tight end Craig Stevens, who was lined up in the backfield. It was just a little flat play. He was Jake Locker's first read, and you know, it was supposed to be an easy first down on a 3rd and 2. Maualuga stayed in perfect coverage. Locker had to go to his next read. Unfortunately, he did complete the pass. They got the first down, but Maualuga made it very difficult on the Titans' offense because of the solid coverage on Craig Stevens. So, you know, there's a lot of upside to what Ray Maualuga showed us over the course of the Titans game, and you know, if he can continue to show that throughout, you know, the next game against the Dallas Cowboys, middle linebacker may not be viewed as such a weak position going forward. Chris, what were your thoughts on Maualuga during the Titans game?
Surprised. Something happened over the offseason after Maualuga made a trip to free agency. He's leaner. He's making better reads. He's faster sideline to sideline. It's very, very strange. You actually wrote a very good film breakdown on Tuesday about it, and I was assigned an awards article where I handed out awards on Wednesday, predictions, and Ray Maualuga was actually my most improved player of the year, and that is solely based on the 2 preseason games we've seen so far. But, you know, and it's not a lot to go on, and it wasn't against the best competition, but on an individual basis, preseason is very good for seeing how players have improved or lack thereof. And Maualuga has been all over the place, and you know he's been listening to the fans. We've heard him admit that that's affected him in the past, and hopefully that the fan reaction, especially to his being brought back to Cincinnati this offseason, lit a fire under him. And, I mean, so far, so good. We'll see if it continues, but right now, he is the most improved player on the roster, I think, in my opinion, and he's showing it. And it's very strange considering I've been the biggest advocate of getting him off the field in favor of Vontaze Burfict sliding to the middle. Now I'm struggling with actually saying that through 2 games at least. So flip here, though, and finish up our Titans recap and talk a little bit about Boom Herron. He actually had a bit of a breakout game. He ripped off a nice run and ended up with 9 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown. His long run came in at 40 yards off of, I believe, and Sean, you may be able to clarify better, I believe it was a read option play that he ripped the 40-yard run off on with Josh Johnson in a quarterback. But, you know, it's great to see Herron make his case for the roster, but at the same time, I have a very hard time saying he's going to make the final roster over a guy like Rex Burkhead. But, Sean, I'll let you elaborate a little more on that.
You know, yeah, it's he certainly broke out against the Titans. That 40-yard touchdown run on that read option play with Josh Johnson was pretty spectacular. He showed that burst and some great straight line speed. I guess that's why they got the nickname Boom for him. Because to tell you the truth, I didn't watch him too much at Ohio State before he came to Cincinnati, And that might be one of the reasons why I've kind of been down on the guy, despite, what he showed in coverage on special teams, as far as, obviously last year he made some great plays against, on some punts. But I've always been an advocate of Cedric Pierman over him and even Rex Burkhead over him because I think that he could bring, that those guys could bring more to the table for Cincinnati. However, Dan Herron, I think, really closed the gap for me a bit after the preseason game against the Titans. I think it's a 3-horse race now for what could be either 1 or 2 roster spots. So, I'm looking forward to seeing if he can improve. I'd like to see him in there against some more stout competition. So, we can see if, the big runs from Herron were a fluke or not. Going forward, it's just he's a guy to keep an eye on, and he could be a sneaky addition to the final 53-man roster. That'll do it for the Titans recap. And we had one other great event that transpired not too long ago in the 3rd episode of Hard Knocks, Chris.
Yeah, let's just jump right into it. The Bengals are a funny team, and they're a great group of guys, and if you're an NFL fan and you don't like this team after 3 episodes, I really don't know what to tell you. But this team is hysterical, especially the rookie talent show that we got to see. James Harrison's funny, especially the way he absolutely hates NFL Films players. But the rookie talent show, guys making fun of Taylor Mays for his unique lifestyle, I guess we could say, and his strange backpacks and attire. And things like that. The highlight of the show for me was Marcus Hunt getting on the whiteboard there and drawing up a play. Like, I think he was imitating Darren Simmons and ended up drawing some genitalia that I won't go into further detail on. And that was the show for me. This team is hysterical, and they're very young. They're very relatable. And, if you're not behind them, I have a very I don't get how you couldn't be behind them after watching something like this, because as much as they're going through physically and mentally, they are a great group of guys, and they're hysterical. Sean, your thoughts on the humor in the show?
Yeah, I laughed out loud so many times during that episode of Hard Knocks. It was almost unbearable. My stomach was hurting. Yeah, the Marcus Hunt thing was terrific. The Taylor Mays thing was terrific. Big shout out to former guest of ours, Roy Roundtree, for doing that amazing Taylor Mays impression. I mean, that was absolutely terrific. And yeah, this team, and I tweeted out kind of the same thing last night during the show. Like, if you don't absolutely love this team right now through 3 episodes of Hard Knocks, what's wrong with you, really? These guys, for how much they have to endure right now, to have, to be so lighthearted and be constantly joking around like that. What a great group of guys to have around, some great characters. Just really, these are humble guys, and they like to take time out to have fun, and you got to respect that. One thing that I've got to point out, too, is even Marvin Lewis gets into the humor when he put up on the projector BenJarvis Green-Ellis getting a ride into practice from owner Mike Brown. And BenJarvis had a little thigh pat on for Mike Brown for giving him the ride, and Marvin Lewis got a kind of freeze-framed it and had a red circle around it on the projector. And, the place erupted in laughter. That's just hilarious to have a head coach that gets in on it like that as well. And that's why these guys love Marvin Lewis as their head coach in Cincinnati. So just some great things to watch on Hard Knocks. If you haven't seen the episodes yet, I'm sure you can find them somewhere. Highly, highly recommended. It's fantastic. Let's talk about another coach for a second right now, and defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer. One of the big things in the middle of the show that happened, and I think Joe Reedy actually even tweeted about it after the show yesterday, was when they highlighted Mike Zimmer kind of in the middle of the episode, and how many people in the Bengals organization, be it coaches or players, and not just defensive players, but offensive players as well, they have such a respect for Mike Zimmer. And, you see guys like Adam Jones and things saying, like, yeah, like that guy was the father I never had. What a compliment to give a defensive coordinator, like a guy like Mike Zimmer, who's known to be so rough around the edges. I got to tell you that this might be one of the most deserving guys in the NFL of a head coaching position. And if the other 31 teams were watching that episode of Hard Knocks, that's really got to weigh in a little bit at least on his chances to maybe finally become a head coach in 2014, barring the success of the Bengals defense this coming season. Chris, what do you think about Zimmer in that situation there?
Well, I think we didn't see any surprises. We know Zimmer has the respect of his players. You can see that much on the sidelines. It was nice to have a more intricate look at it and hear some actual endorsements from the players themselves. But it's not really anything surprising in my mind. He's a very tough guy, and he has a no BS approach. But part of the reason he's not going to see a head coaching job anytime soon is the fact that it's an offensive league, and he's not the type of guy that's going to draft a quarterback and mold a quarterback. And so if you bring on a guy like Zimmer as a head coach, you need to have a great offensive staff in place, because Zimmer he's not going to touch that side. And right now, that's the most important side. And while the 6 to 10 minutes of Zimmer time, as I like to call it, in episode 3 of Hard Knocks were great, the first 2 episodes really showed him cussing up a storm and being tough with his players. So I think we've now seen both sides of the spectrum. I think NFL Films is trying to have a nice contrast, both sides of Zimmer here. But I don't think it's going to do anything to further his candidacy for a head coaching spot necessarily. Speaking of the great job NFL Films is doing, one thing we knew was coming, and I guess it's a bit of a preview for what's to come in the next few episodes. The Films crew focused on Aaron Maven. They actually started the show with him and his art and what he does outside of Bengals camp, and they ended the show with him losing his job. And it was tough to watch, and you always hate to hear a Bengals staff member call a player and say, hey, we need you to bring any playbooks you have and your iPad that we gave you and come meet the coaching staff, because you know what that means. The player knows what that means, especially in Aaron Maven's case, a guy who's had to do it plenty of times in the past, as a guy who hasn't lived up to expectations. And that's the tough part of Hard Knocks, and we knew it was coming. We got a little preview as they cut 3 guys during that episode. There's going to be a lot more of that in the next couple of episodes, and I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not really looking forward to it. Sean?
Yeah, I'm with you, Chris. The later episodes of Hard Knocks always get so tough to watch because you really grow to like these players as people, and it makes the final cuts that much more difficult to watch some of your favorite guys kind of have to endure being cut by an NFL team and then do their best to try to go and latch on elsewhere. So yeah, it really does become hard to watch, and it's an unfortunate circumstance, but a necessary one in the NFL. And NFL Films just does such a great job documenting what transpires, as what we saw with Aaron Maven over the past episode, and Maven seems like such a great guy. I really do hope that he latches on somewhere else, and I really do have a lot of respect for the Bengals organization to let him go so early, knowing that they weren't going to keep him around so they could give him that chance to latch on with another team. Speaks very highly of that organization.
And I just want to say really quick that decision in the meeting was actually from Mike Brown. If you watch the episode, that was Mike Brown saying, hey, let's get rid of a couple guys and help them get a shot somewhere else.
Right, and that's true. And Mike Brown being the bad guy all the time as far as Cincinnati is concerned, it really does show him in a different light that this guy actually does care about people. I mean, he gives the ride to Green Ellis. He's joking around with him earlier in the show. He gives these guys a chance by saying, hey, we know we're not going to keep them. Let's get rid of them early, and hopefully they can latch on somewhere else. It's really starting to show Mike Brown in a whole new light, and maybe some newfound respect for the man. So that being said about Hard Knocks, we've given our own take time and time again on the Bengals 2013 rookie class. But now we have a very special guest who actually scouted these very same rookies for a living for several NFL teams. Bengals Central is very proud to welcome a man that we greatly respect in the NFL, former NFL scout and current GM of Our-Lads National Scouting Services, Dan Shonka. Dan, thanks so much for joining us today.
You bet you guys. Yeah, it's that time where, hey, we're going to see what the rookies can do, and the cut downs are coming, next Tuesday to 75. So we're going to see how all these guys are respected among the different teams and how they've done during camp.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're really excited to speak with you today, Dan. We've now had 2 weeks of the preseason in the books. We have a small glimpse of what some of these players may be capable of in 2013. Being a scout yourself, I'm sure you're very familiar with the Bengals 2013 rookie class. Could you give us your thoughts on, some of those key players, and have any of them really caught your attention since they've entered the NFL?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think that, overall, the Bengals have just done a great job of drafting the last few years. I think that bringing in solid guys that, like a Tyler Eifert, for instance, from Notre Dame, that a real versatile guy that can move around. And in fact, I tell you, I go back far enough that Jay Gruden, I scouted him, and I think I was the only scout that rode him at Louisville as a quarterback. So, that's how far, I go back with Jay Gruden. But I think Jay's going to move him around and, use him in the slot, put him outside as an X like they did at Notre Dame. And I personally think that he is really going to be a big weapon to help out Andy Dalton this year. There's several weapons on that team, but sometimes your best friend's got to be a tight end. And even though that Jermaine Grisham's there, and Jermaine just seems like he gets injured at an inopportune time. If there ever is a good or bad time, there's none. But this is a chance for Tyler to match up with Grisham and two tight end sets, and I think it's going to be really a positive thing for the Bengals.
So, Dan, that's some great insight. And what, with your extensive experience in scouting, like you said, lots of folks even forget that Gruden was at Louisville. It's been a while, and that's awesome because, we have an opportunity to pick your brain here. As far as the scouting process goes, how in the world do you scout a guy like Margus Hunt, who, while is obviously a exceptional athlete, he doesn't have a lot of experience in football, and his good tape where he flashed came against kind of lesser competition at SMU. How do you scout that and project that to the NFL level?
Well, I hate to say this, but a lot of times you're looking at a guy's height, weight, speed, and then his athletic ability. And, God only makes so many big people that can run and show the athletic ability that Hunt did in college. He's a big track guy, and a lot of those guys that are in the track realm, big, shot put guys that could move, and, really all those Olympic style, except for maybe Al Orator, who, a lot of listeners probably never heard of, but he was a great Olympian for the United States. If I remember right, he was in like 5 different Olympics. But most of those other guys out there, Sammy Walker and people like that, they all tried the NFL, and I tell you, they didn't really succeed. So we're going to see if Hunt can do that, because he'll be one of the rare track guys that could come in and make an impact on the NFL, because you guys have seen him. I mean, he does play high when he comes off. I mean, he doesn't come out and up, he comes up and out. And you got to get him to play low, because, hey, all he is a big Rodgers blocking sled. I mean, that's what he is. And these NFL blockers, those guys are going to get a good fit right in his sternum and drive him down the field. So he's got to learn to play low and get his pads over his toes and his eyes up. And he's a work in progress. And I'll tell you, sometimes those big guys, the reason they play high is because they don't have flexibility in their lower back. And there's not a lot you can do about that if that's, what's causing him to play upright. But, there's no question he's a developmental guy, and he's only, played football for around 5 years. So, but, there's guys there that, he can fit into a rotation and learn. And a thing that he did well is they can stick him inside and block extra points and field goals because he can jump, he can get his hands up, but he does have he's got a ways to go, I think, before he's going to make an impact on the NFL. I mean, especially with Carlos Dunlap and Michael Johnson there, and Ed Gathers, and some of these other guys that have got the ability to play well in the heat of battle.
Wow, that was just the kind of tremendous insight that we were expecting from you, Dan, as we began to talk to you today. And that was a terrific breakdown on Marcus Hunt, and I know Chris agrees with me here, saying we completely agree with you on your assessment of Hunt. And I guess the nice thing is, at least for him, is that he's in such a deep rotation in Cincinnati right now that he's not forced to have to contribute right away, which will be nice to allow the coaches to help develop him for a little bit yet before he really has to see the heat of battle. So that's I guess a positive side for him there. Flipping the script here and going on to the offensive side of the ball, I want to talk about third-year quarterback Andy Dalton for a moment. The Bengals offense is obviously going to rely very heavily on Dalton this season. He's got a lot of weapons surrounding him right now, which are why the expectations are a little bit higher for Dalton in 2013. Now, since you initially scouted him out of TCU in 2011, what have you seen from him that has improved since he has joined the Bengals?
Well, the one thing that he did is he just, it was on-the-job training for him. Originally, he was a 4-year starter in college, and he made that move from a spread formation quarterback, and took snaps under center. He was about as green as you could get into a pro-style offense, and I think the things that we liked, he developed his footwork and his ability to get to the throwing point quicker. I think that, Jay Gruden spent a lot of time with him, working on all the nuances of an NFL pro-style offense. The thing that Andy had was that quick release. He had accuracy, and he had good timing, and those things were a carryover from his days at TCU, where he ran out of that spread offense. So that helped. I think that really the best thing, and he really he's developed a little bit more of a deep ball. Of course, with A.J. Green, you want to get that ball out there. So he's cut the ball loose a little quicker sometimes. Quarterbacks will let the receiver get down the field a little farther, but then that also gives time. That ball hangs a little bit to let those safeties get over and slap the ball away. But, Andy always had great intangibles. He's a guy that worked extremely hard. Has he topped out yet? No, you wouldn't think so. I think that as long as a guy is consistent and continues to work hard, I think that he's going to continue to ascend. Andy's arm strength is best that short, medium area. He can get that ball out quickly to the short receivers, and that's good for the West Coast offense because you got to have the footwork and the quick release and to hit those quick slants. And now, once in a while, like I said, you got to stretch that secondary so people aren't squeezing up on you to jump those under route stuff. But I think with theoretically, you're supposed to be able to get that ball loose when the receiver's no farther than 12 yards down the field, a deep pass, believe it or not. And then you don't have problems with safeties, things like that. So I think he's cutting the ball loose a little bit quicker on the deep things to A.J. Green. And then, of course, Sanu really came on toward the end of last year, Marvin Jones, those kind of guys. And so all those in the tight ends we talked about, the backs now, you got Bernard who can catch the ball. I think all those things are going to help Andy Dalton be a better quarterback, and he has shown real positive year-to-year improvement since he left TCU in 2011.
Yeah, Dan, the weapons are certainly there in place now in what is a third season, which is typically the most pivotal. So we'll see if that progression continues on an upward trend here. Let's paint in broader strokes here and talk AFC North rather than individuals. now that we've seen 2 games so far. What are your thoughts about the AFC North heading into the 2013 season?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I've always thought that it might be the toughest division in football, and then now with the way Cleveland is ascended, I think that certainly on paper they got to do it on the field. But, I mean, it's hard to argue with Baltimore being the Super Bowl champions, Cincinnati, you know, just really putting together an excellent team, and Pittsburgh is still kind of a work in progress with their offensive line, and they've had so many new players they're trying to interchange there. But I tell you, Pittsburgh's always going to be Pittsburgh. They're going to line up, they're going to play tough, and then Cleveland, like I said, they're going to be a team to be reckoned with now that they've got the right play caller connected with the right quarterback, because Brandon Weeden, coming out of Oklahoma State, was always an excellent vertical passer, has a real strong arm. They gun all the use a radar gun on all the quarterbacks at the combine, and Brandon Weeden's arm is as strong as it's been. Actually, it was better than even Joe Flacco's at the combine. Another guy that was 59 miles an hour, by the way, is what they clocked Weeden, and also that's like Colin Kaepernick. He also was clocked at 59 miles an hour. Now, you know, when you look at Kaepernick, say, for instance, for San Francisco, you wonder if that delivery of his, you know, how fast that ball. But I'll tell you, he throws a fastball now. When it comes out of there, he slings it. And so there's another guy with a strong arm out there, but Weeden's arm is every bit as strong. So, but that AFC North is, like I said, you can argue the point, but I think you got 4 very, very tough teams. And, you know, I personally think it's the best division in football, you know, along with that NFC West and the Cardinals, as long as they come up. But that AFC North is, you know, tough to beat.
Yeah, that's some great points there, Dan, and some great insight on Brandon Weeden. I know I can speak for Chris because we've talked about this before. We really think the Browns could be a very sneaky team. We really do like Weeden in that more vertical passing scheme of Norv Turner's this year. So that's definitely something to watch. And, you know, going back to the Bengals for one last question here, obviously the AFC North is going to be a highly contested division this year. For the Bengals to succeed in that division, obviously it's going to take a tremendous team effort. What do you think is the Bengals' biggest strength and biggest weakness right now as they head into the 2013 season?
Well, I think that their strengths are in the team. It's going to be tough to hold on to the 53 best, because there's going to be some guys they're going to let out of there. They're going to be pretty good football players. I think that you know, Paul Alexander's done a great job of developing that offensive line, and I think they've got depth there. They've got good football players there. I think with the addition of Giovani Bernard at running back, now gives you a versatile guy in there. That defensive line, I mean, Geno Atkins is an absolute beast, and Pico really helps because he absorbs some of those blocks, and Geno can get in there. You got the ends that are really high motor, great effort guys, and hey, you're going to get some leadership from James Harrison, you know, one of the finest players. Again, here's a guy that goes as a free agent, and I actually wrote him as a 6th, 7th round choice out of Kent State when he came out of there, and like James, and there's a consummate pro right there. I'm telling you, you got a bunch of pretty tough linebackers. I think the secondary, there's depth. I think the thing that's probably the best thing about the Bengals is they've got a lot of good football players 2 and 3 deep. I mean, there's some really good players in there, and I think they're going to give you problems on defense. Offensively, they can move the ball around. You know, weaknesses, I think, you know, Andy Dalton just got to be consistent and keep elevating his game, because now he's got some weapons. Hey, he can run check downs with guys like Bernard in there and get big yardage screens. He does a nice job picking through there. Rex Burkhead, he'll be a guy that adds depth, I think. And then a guy that I tell you what I really like, and he's shown he really in the first preseason game he really did a nice job. But the backup quarterback, even if Andy Dalton has to miss a game or two, I think Josh Johnson has a chance to do something. I mean, this guy got a $400,000 signing bonus a year ago with San Francisco, and then they opted to keep Tolzien, and then he went in the UFL for a couple of games and was clearly the best player in that league. So Josh Johnson's a guy, you put a little star by him because I think he's an ascending guy. He's got a lot of positive things going for him, but I think the depth of the Bengals is a real, that might be the best thing. Good players in the front line. You got depth, good people that, hey, the next man in, you're going to have one to replace the one that got banged up or got hurt. Hey, Sean Williams, we didn't talk about him, another rookie that's really a good football player. So there's depth in the secondary. There's depth in that defensive line. You got some linebackers in there. Yeah, the offensive line, the receivers catch the ball, which I always felt is the number one thing. I know people, it sounds funny, but believe it or not, there's too many pro receivers that catch the ball, and if I was the general manager, it'd be about the last time I saw them on my team. But, if they're a constant, got the dropsies. So I think that there's a lot of real positive things there for Cincinnati, and hey, you could argue that it's going to come down between Cincinnati and Baltimore possibly, but it's going to be a tough road to get through that AFC North.
There you have it, Bengals Central's listeners. Some great insight from Dan Shonka of Our Lads. Dan, thanks so much for coming on and educating us today about the scouting process, rookies, and the 2013 outlook. Why don't you go ahead and take this time to let everyone know where they can reach you and find your work?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, whether you're doing real football or fantasy football, you definitely want to go to our depth charts because we've got full-time people that keep those depth charts updated at ourlads.com, and come to our site at ourlads.com for a variety of 2014 draft information.
Yeah, Dan, I have to tell you, you guys have the best depth charts in the business. That's not an exaggeration, Bengals Central's listeners. Thanks so much for joining us today. We highly recommend you guys also check out Dan on Twitter at ourlads_Shonka and visit ourlads.com for all your NFL, fantasy, and team individual depth chart needs. Thanks, Dan.
Great, guys. Thanks a lot. Enjoyed being with you. Hey, go Bengals.
This is Michael Johnson, 93 from the Cincinnati Bengals. You're listening to BengalsCentralRadio. Who they?
That was certainly some great insight by Dan regarding the Bengals rookies in the 2013 season. It's an exciting young group this year, and we certainly can't wait to see what they can accomplish going forward. And, speaking of the Bengals rookies, they're going to be taking part in the upcoming preseason game, obviously. So, Chris, let's go ahead and preview a little bit of what's to come in Week 3, the dress rehearsal against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, going down to Big D is going to be a nice test for the Cincinnati Bengals here in Week 3, the week that traditionally sees teams play their starters for most of the game before resting in Week 4 and prep for the regular season. And, let's just jump right into different aspects of the team and what we need to see, where we need to see improvement and where we need to see just more consistency. For me, the most stable position so far has probably been the receiving core. Everyone on that core has been great. I can't name a name who was really disappointed outside of maybe Kobe Hamilton, but he's somebody, as a rookie who I wasn't sure how much to expect from in the first place. So, even a guy like Brandon Tate has been playing really well in the receiving core. So that's right now, receiver is the most stable position in my mind. Least stable would probably, I'd have to be broad strokes here and just say defense. I need to see more. You can't give up 29 yards to Sean Green. You can't give up 4.3 yards per carry against a Tennessee Titans squad. For me, the defense as a whole, it's just we need to see more consistency, and they're gonna see a big test here with a guy in Tony Romo who almost hit 5,000 yards passing last year. I need to see Leon Hall against Des Bryant. I need to see, this stable of running backs like DeMarco Murray and Philip Tanner shut down. It's going to be a tough test for the defense. And it will, believe it or not, give us a better idea of where the defense stands going into next season. Sean, your most and least stable units headed into Game 3?
Yeah, I really like what you brought up about those positional groups, and there's a couple of different ways that I could really go around this, but as far as the most stable group, I really feel like it's the defensive line. I mean, there's such a deep rotation in that part of the team. I mean, the Cowboys' offensive line isn't really known to keep Tony Romo upright all the time, so really seeing that defensive line shine and get a win in that situation, put Romo on his back a couple of times, should be expected, I think, out of this unit coming up into Game 3, especially being that it's the dress rehearsal and the starters will be out there for a good chunk of the game. As far as the least stable part of the Bengals right now, I'm looking to see something special out of one of the two backup quarterbacks. After preseason Game 1, I thought that Josh Johnson was almost literally running away with it. But after watching Week 2, I'm not so sure. Johnson really struggled with his accuracy. He struggled with ball security and struggled with some decision-making. And I thought John Skelton was a lot more solid of an option, especially as a passer in that game. So to me, the backup quarterback position is a lot closer than it was after the first week of the preseason. So I know these guys aren't going to get a lot of playing time because Andy Dalton is probably going to see the better part of 2, maybe 3 quarters heading into this game, and these guys are going to get limited time. But I want one of these guys to show me something special and to show me why they should be the one that sticks with this team in 2013. I know Week 4 is going to be more of their highlight package, so to speak. But I want one of them to start showing me something special come this week because right now I cannot make up my mind which of these guys I would rather have behind Andy Dalton for the upcoming season. Now that I've talked about some backups for a little bit, as we know, preseason Week 3 is the dress rehearsal. So what expectations from starters, can kind of come into play here because they're going to be on the field for a good amount of time. And like I said, as far as the defensive side of the ball goes, I've already touched on the defensive line. I really want to see a lot of pressure on Tony Romo. That's the forte of that team. And then back in the secondary, we got to see some more solid coverage back there. The guys have been kind of laying off in coverage a little bit, allowing teams to dink and dunk down the field on them. Got to tighten that up. And, they can still play the bend, don't break style of defense, but a little less bend would be nice in Week 3. On the offensive side of the ball, you really would like to see Andy Dalton keep his hot streak going and put up some great numbers again against a Cowboys secondary that's vastly improving. And, time will tell if A.J. Green will see some playing time. But, if you have him on the field, you'd like to see him get involved a little bit and, start to get back the timing that he may have been missing in game action with Andy Dalton because they really haven't been in a game situation together since the wild card loss to Houston. So you'd really like to see him get a little bit more involved. And also with Giovani Bernard, you really want to see that running game going full speed as well as it was against the Titans. Chris, what are you expecting from the starters against the Cowboys?
Well, starter-wise, I think you're going to see better offensive line play as long as Andrew Whitworth's back in at left tackle. We'll see health-wise if he'll be back in. Defensive line-wise, I think, like you said, is probably the most stable position on the roster. When it's at full strength, I think that's the big if here. If Michael Johnson and Dunlap are good to go, then they're going to give that Cowboys offensive line some serious fits. Geno Atkins is already going to do that from the middle, but you need those guys on the edge doing the same thing as well for this defense to be 100% effective. As far as other starters go, we need to see a better performance from the secondary, and against a guy like Dez Bryant and even a Miles Austin across from him, I think you're going to see some struggles in the secondary. Leon Hall will match up well with these guys, but After that, I need to see a veteran like Terrence Newman play better in coverage. I want to see Kirkpatrick on a guy like Des Bryant, just because it's the preseason. Starter-wise, I really do expect the offense to continue at its methodical pace up and down the field, just beating up on the defense for Dallas. But Bengals defense-wise, barring starters, missing time for injury, I think we'll see a bit of a bounce-back performance. That said, the one player I'm keeping an eye on the most now, because he has forced me to through 2 games, is linebacker Ray Maluga. We touched on earlier in the show how he's suddenly breaking out and having a great campaign here in this first couple of games in the preseason. He is the player to watch in my mind right now, because instead of potentially having position changes and shuffling the starting lineups, Maluga has now played himself into keeping his starter role for sure, as long as his performance keeps up. So to me, he's the player to watch. Sean, your player to watch?
My player to watch is also on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going with rookie safety Sean Williams. After we saw George Iloka make the boneheaded decision to punch Jordan Campbell in the helmet, which broke his 3rd metatarsal as it was documented in this last episode of Hard Knocks, Sean Williams and Taylor Mays are the 2 guys that are battling out for that safety position opposite Reggie Nelson. And I'm looking for the rookie to really step up and show what he can do with significant playing time. I really liked him in run support during the Titans game. He showed that he's very solid tackler, and he can work up inside the box really well. I want to see a little bit more of him in coverage and helping out the cornerbacks and, being that safety net over the top and not allowing anybody to get past him. So I want to see a little bit more out of Sean Williams as he is, becomes one of the guys that are vying for that strong safety gig opposite free safety Reggie Nelson. So that is my guy to watch. So now that we have previewed the upcoming game, let's go ahead and actually talk to a man that will be actually taking part in the Bengals preseason Week 3 matchup against the Dallas Cowboys.
Football fans, check out the official T-shirt apparel shop for BengalsCentral Check out BigFrog.com/Cincinnati. That's BigFrog.com/Cincinnati. Big Frog offers 24-hour turnaround and no minimums. At Big Frog, you think it, we ink it. Also visit them at their fabulous store over at Anderson Town Center, 7426 Beachmont Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45255. Who day?
Bengals Central listeners, we're happy to announce that we have a very special guest on our podcast at this time. Joining us right now is none other than rookie running back Giovani Nard. Giovani is starring in Built for Training Camp on NFL.com in accordance with Gillette Deodorant. There's new episodes coming out every Tuesday, so be sure to log on to NFL.com/BuiltForTraining to check it out. So, Gio, thanks so much for joining us today for a chat. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm actually just got in the cold tub, so don't mind me.
Good stuff, man. Hey, thanks so much for taking a couple minutes here to chat with us. We're really excited to be talking with you today. So you're the focus of NFL.com's Built for Training Camp web series. So obviously we have to ask, I mean, it's revolving around training camp. So how has training camp treated you so far?
Well, obviously, I'm in the cold tub because training camp is really hard. So I guess that kind of gives you an inside look at how it is. But, yeah, as far as, how the things are going and whatnot, getting adjusted to it, I'm definitely getting adjusted to it. I think every day, it's become easier. Every day I'm learning something new. So, as a rookie, that's the biggest thing that you have to do is understand, the playbook. You have to understand, what, your teammates, kind of expect from you, and as well as the coaches. So, there's definitely a learning curve that goes with it. But, the more you do it, the more experience you get with it, the easier it becomes.
Hey, Gio, that's great to hear about the positive progression that training camp is providing as you start your NFL career. Your co-star is none other than veteran running back Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, a man we've had the pleasure of talking with in the past. Has he taken you under his wing and helped you adapt to the NFL? What's the camaraderie like between you guys and the rest of the running back?
I mean, he's really done a great job of kind of, just really helping not only me out, but all the other running backs out. He's really, definitely, you can tell that he is a leader in that room. You can tell he's a veteran in that room as well. And, for me, my biggest thing is to become like a veteran like him. He's played running back for, his entire time, being in the NFL. And, he's been in it for a while, and, that's an accomplishment in itself. And, if I can get to that, situation, it'll definitely be a blessing. But, he's done a really good job of kind of helping everybody out, and, because you can tell that he's not all about himself. You can tell he's definitely a team player, and he wants the best for the team as well.
That's great to hear, Giovani, that you guys have such a nice camaraderie built up, and we have all the faith in the world that you're going to get to that veteran status eventually. But, right now, being a rookie come in, we've got to ask you this question because we see it all the time. We got to talk about the rookie hazing going on. Have we missed out anything that the Hard Knocks cameras may have missed? Have you had to carry any pads in the locker room or anything like that so far in training camp?
Well, not in the running back room. I think, the running backs are really just a mellow type group. We kind of keep to ourselves. But defensively, I mean, that's where it usually comes out of, linebackers, DBs, and all those guys on the defensive side. They're the ones that, usually do the hazing. But, our group of guys, they're great guys. They're all trying to help each other to get better. And, but as far as for me, I'm trying to stay away from the rookie hazing. I try not to get involved with that. I try not to say anything mean to anybody. So I just kind of keep my own mind. Kind of do my own thing and kind of stay away from those guys.
Hey, that's great to hear that you're escaping that kind of thing, my man. You're the focus and attention on a national audience right now, and you're quickly becoming a fan favorite. Not only are you the star, one of the stars, I should say, of Hard Knocks, you're the focal point of this Built for Training Camp website.com. So not only are you enduring a typical NFL training camp as a rookie, you're also doing it with much more media attention than usual with the NFL Films crews around. What's that like for you?
Well, for me, I've been really, kind of just handled it. I mean, the biggest thing for me is, I have a job to be done, which is not, trying to get an acting job, which is not being an actor. My biggest thing is, being a football player and doing what I need to do. To not only make the team, but, to contribute and helping the team win. Hard Knocks, they've done a really good job of kind of not being in that way, but, still getting a really good inside look. They've really done a good job in that sense, and, my hands down are going. Because, at the end of the day, they have a job to be done as well. They're just trying to, feed their, kids and whatnot and just help their families out as well. So, for me, it's just going out there, just competing every day and, just showing everybody, who I am, on and off the field.
That's great insight there, Gio. We're really happy that you guys in the Hard Knocks crew are able to coexist really nicely, and, that you're really taking the football aspect of it seriously rather than the acting aspect. And, that's really now because you really did shine in the second preseason game against the Titans. I got to ask, how's the chemistry so far between yourself, quarterback Andy Dalton, and the offensive line coming along? Have you guys all kind of had enough time spent together to kind of gel as a unit during training camp?
Definitely. I mean, every day you get to understand, your teammates that much better. Just that going with the playbook. Every day you get to understand something else new in the playbook. You become, more comfortable with something. You become more comfortable with a certain route. And it shows, from one preseason game to the next, my biggest thing is to continue to build on, what I've already established. I hate, having, like, we call it the roller coaster kind of feeling. Having one good game and going down and having, 2 bad games and have 2 good games. And, we just kind of want just a level kind of, increase and just continue to get better every day. That's just how I've always been. I always try to, try my best to do, what I have to do and get the job done.
So, Gio, we'll wrap this up with one last question that we absolutely had to get out there because there was a very memorable moment from the first episode of Hard Knocks in which
is it about James Harrison?
No, but we can talk about him too. How is he? Is he treating you okay?
Yeah, I mean he definitely tackles me, but I try my best to run away from him at all means, whether that's on the field and off the field. So.
Very cool, very cool. What we were actually we're going with here was your means of transportation, your minivan, what I think you referred to as the promise ring. And your teammates were kind of giving you some lumps for that one. And we just wanted to know, do you have new wheels yet? And are the guys kind of laying off of your means of transportation?
Yeah, I mean, some of the guys actually like it. Some of the guys are enjoying or if I do bring it around, some guys ask for rides and whatnot. No, I'm kidding. Nobody asks me for rides. Nobody wants to be in the van because nobody wants to be seen in the van. But for me, it's just, it's just my means of transportation. It gets me to point A to point B. It's not my car. I may eventually buy it off of my girlfriend's mom. But we'll see how that goes. If my funds are okay by the end of the season, I may, try to purchase her car. But we'll see.
That sounds good. Hey, at least driving the minivan around kind of gets you off the hook and carting the teammates around everywhere. Is that right?
Exactly.
There you go, man. There you go. There you have it, Bengals fans. That would be running back Giovani Bernard talking all things Bengals and Hard Knocks. And also be sure to catch him on NFL.com's Built for Training Camp web series in accordance with Gillette deodorant. You can find it every Tuesday, a new episode, NFL.com/Built for Training. We look forward to watching him in 2013 and onward as he becomes one of the most dangerous running backs in the NFL. Gia, thanks so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. We wish you all the best in the coming season.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Football fans, check out the official T-shirt apparel shop for Bengals Central Radio. Check out BigFrog.com/Cincinnati. That's BigFrog.com/Cincinnati. Big Frog offers 24-hour turnaround and no minimums. At Big Frog, you think it, we ink it. Also visit them at their fabulous store over at Anderson Town Center, 7426 Beachmont Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45255. Who day?
Chris, I got to say, what a fantastic young man and budding football player, NFL player that Giovani Bernard is. He seems to be doing everything the right way in his young NFL career. It's great to know that he matches his prowess on the field with a great attitude off of the field. I'm really looking forward to see what he can accomplish in 2013 and beyond.
Yeah, I agree, and he's got a very bright future in front of him, and he's a humble kid with a heck of a minivan, so best of luck to him. Let's finish up here with our weekly mailbag segment and kick things off with Cody Toomey, and I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. You can find Cody on Twitter at CODIKI, and he wants to know, who is your guess for biggest shock to make and get cut? What undrafted free agent makes it this year? I'll be a little brief. My biggest shock to get cut at this point in time is actually Rex Burkhead. I think if I had to pick a shock, I think Burkhead could be on his way out because he's not as dynamic on special teams as Boom Herron. I think the media, myself included, has hyped Burkhead up a lot because he's a Brian Leonard clone, and that's fine, but I think he is someone who could end up getting the axe, especially if he cannot show that he's as good as Herron on special teams when it comes to defending kicks and punt coverage and things like that. My undrafted free agent to make it this year, if it happens, is actually my shock to make it, and that would be linebacker Jason DeMonch. If you've listened to the show in the past, you know me and Sean and myself are very high on DeMonch, and he's continuing to prove that he's more valuable than guys like Jordan Campbell as far as undrafted free agents go. So, sleeper, deep sleeper undrafted free agent to make the roster, Ontario McCaleb, but I think he's more of a practice squad guy. So for me, DeMonch, if any undrafted free agent is the shock as a undrafted guy to make this final roster, as we've seen happen many times in the past few years here. Sean, your answer to this question?
My answer isn't going to vary too differently from yours, Chris. I mean, obviously, Jason DeMonch, as you said, you and I have been very high on him since his, I guess, beginnings in Cincinnati in his NFL career. So, I mean, obviously, I think, he's my undrafted free agent this year. I think he's the prototypical speed guy, the Dante Moak replacement, if you will. Biggest shock to get cut, actually, for me, and this might upset some people, but is the biggest shock to get cut for me is Cedric Pierman this year. I'm kind of going along the same lines as you were there, Chris, with Rex Burkhead there, but I have just this sneaky suspicion, just call it a gut feeling, that we're going to see some more out of Rex Burkhead in the near future. I have this feeling that the coaches are very sold on this kid and what potential he brings to the team. And I think Dan Herron really, really did well for himself against the Titans this past Saturday. That being said, I know Cedric Pierman has been a special teams ace, but you know, these other young guys are kind of getting up into that realm already. Herron's proven himself on the special teams in the past. And Pierman really, to me, hasn't done much as a runner of the football out of the backfield this season. So I think he could be a surprise cut this year. And if I'm going to go with the biggest shock to make the roster, aside from Jason DeMonch, I'll probably have to go with a guy like Reed Fraggle. A late-round draft pick, offensive lineman. There's a lot of guys fighting for that position. But I think Reed Fraggle ends up beating out Dennis Rowland, who, obviously hasn't been too impressive so far this season. And I like Reed Fraggle to kind of be that backup right tackle to Andre Smith. And Chris, as you have mentioned previously in the show, could even be used on the end of an unbalanced line as an extra receiver if the Bengals want to do a little maybe goal line trickery or something. So Reed Fraggle would be that guy for me. The next question we have is from Natty Buck 513, and easy enough, the Twitter handle is @NattyBuck513. They ask, will the Bengals run D miss Pat Sims? We always seem better in that area when he was healthy. Yes, the run defense will miss Pat Sims. This much I can assure you. I think we saw a glimpse of that against Tennessee on Saturday, where Chris Johnson and even Sean Green kind of ran all over the Bengals defensive line. Pat Sims has always been that very stout guy to replace Doma Peko in that nose tackle role on running downs from time to time. And, yards per carry against the Bengals significantly decreased whenever Pat Sims was in the game. Now that he's with the Raiders, we need a guy like Brandon Thompson to step up. However, he's been injured so far. And I got to tell you, that second-year player that has been in there so far, Devin Still, has not impressed me at all so far during the preseason. He's kind of getting thrown around for being such a big guy, and it could be worrisome going forward. Chris, what are your thoughts on the run D and the after the departure of Pat Sims?
Well, there's no question Pat Sims was a huge factor when actually healthy. Like you said, the yards per carry was down when he was able to rotate in behind Peko. I will say you're going to see Sims kind of disappoint in Oakland because this is what Cincinnati does. It churns out quality rotational defensive linemen. They go and get starter money elsewhere, and then, like, say, Frosty Rucker in Cleveland, they kind of struggle as a starter and eventually get cut. Rucker got cut after 1 year. But don't let that fool you. As a rotational player, Sims was as elite as it gets when you put him in next to a guy like Geno Atkins, because he would just take up blockers and stuff the run. And that is something that Brandon Thompson is going to have to step up and do. It's not an easy task, and there's not a lot of help behind him. There's guys like Terrence Stevens and Vaughn Mitoga working on that right now and potentially fighting Thompson really for playing time, not just a roster spot. So we're going to see how that plays out. Still next to Thompson is more of a Geno Atkins guy, so he's not going to be able to step in next to Atkins and be that nice complement to stop the run. So it's Thompson, or there's going to be some potential rotational issues here in Cincinnati next season against the run. The next question comes from our friend Sean Snuff McMahon. You can find him on Twitter at WOLFKO SAUN, and he asks, what is going to be the hardest decision on cut day? Running back, linebacker, wide receiver, defensive line, and who gets cut? That's a very tough one, but for me it comes down to linebackers or wide receivers. And I think wide receiver is probably the more difficult decision at this point. You have a guy like Brandon Tate flashing and playing the best football of his career, in my opinion, through these first two preseason games. That's going to make it very difficult for guys like Ryan Whalen and Kobe Hamilton to make the final roster. We know that the first 3 or 4 spots are reserved, so it's really Brandon Tate trying to fight off Whalen, Sandenbacher, Hamilton, Roundtree. For me, I think Sandenbacher offers a lot more on special teams, so he's a lock. He'll knock Whalen out. I think the Bengals will try to stash Kobe Hamilton out of the practice squad. But I think, and this is going to surprise a lot of people, Brandon Tate is sticking around. I don't know how much playing time he'll see, but what he's shown combined with the infatuation the coaching staff has with him on kick returns, I think that's the toughest position to decide, but I think Tate is going to be probably the last guy in next to Sandenbacher. Sean?
Well, this is a little bit difficult to project right now because obviously there's so much talent on this football team that we could be 100% right or we could be absolutely way off when the final cuts come around. So I'm just going to go through these positions that are listed here really quick. For as far as the running backs go, these are all difficult positions as far as final cuts go. But as far as the running backs go, there's a 3-horse race for 2 spots. It's between Rex Burkhead, Cedric Pierman, and Dan Herron. It's going to be really tough to cut one of those 3 guys, but, it's a numbers game and one of them's got to go. As far as linebackers go, you've got the emergence of J.K. Schaefer, who's looked awesome in the preseason so far, but then you've got guys like Jordan Campbell, and Vincent Ray to a point, trying to fight him for a backup spot and special teams role. So I think the middle linebacker position may be a little bit difficult in there. And then, as far as the wide receivers go, Chris, like you mentioned, Dane Sandenbacher's been stepping up like crazy. So is Brandon Tate. He's looked really good. That doesn't leave a whole lot of room for guys like Kobe Hamilton, Roy Roundtree, who are great talents, but they just don't seem to be able to claw their way up the depth chart a whole lot right now. So, that's going to be tough to cut for cuts there at the end. And then, along the defensive line, it's a little bit more, simple to project, I guess, along the defensive line because you have your surefire starters right there and you have a very good idea of who the backups are going to be. But, there's question marks with, a defensive tackle like Terrence Stevens. Or do the Bengals decide that they want to hang around with Dante Moak and see if he can finally deliver? And even guys like DeQuinn Evans, who hasn't played poorly over the preseason. So, in the depths of every one of these situations, there's going to be very difficult decisions to be made by the coaching staff. And I'm not going to go ahead and project all of these right now and just kind of give an overview on the players that are involved, really. So let's move on from that and go into the next question from Kentucky Dude at JHNN Sports. Kentucky Dude asks, what do the Bengals do with Bernard Scott? He says he knows he's going to start on the PUP list, but they're pretty deep at running back. And, the one thing there that hits the nail on the head is the pretty deep at running back part. I do not believe there is a spot for Bernard Scott on this football team. He had his chance last season, but proved that he cannot stay away from the injury bug, and I think that it will ultimately be his undoing. As I said in the previous question at the running back position, I think it's a 3-horse race for 2 positions, the 2 final positions, I should say, between Rex Burkhead, Cedric Pierman, and Dan Herron. I don't think Bernard Scott is even in that discussion. I think he's going to go ahead and hit the free agent market. Chris, what are your thoughts on Bernard Scott in that running back situation?
Yeah, Scott will ride the pup and then probably be released when they actually have to make room for him. Everything the Bengals coaching staff wanted from him as a compliment to Green Ellis last season, they're going to get twofold with rookie Giovani Bernard here in 2013. Scott has been unable to stay healthy. He's already 29 years old. We know what that means here in next February when he turns 30 and reaches that dreaded age for running backs. To me, there's just too much talent at the position right now. You have to keep Rex Burkhead, and you have to keep one of Kierman and drawing a blank.
Burkhead, Heron.
Kierman and Boom. And the thing here is Scott doesn't necessarily offer the same type of stuff on special teams, which is where he would have to make his money at that point. So there's not room on the roster, and his loss has been mitigated in a big way with the addition of Giovani Bernard. We'll wrap things up here with our final question from Rob Bergeron. You can find him on Twitter at Robert Bergeron. That's Bergeron. And he wants to know, in essence, who's going to end up on the practice squad. And for me, I'll just list some names here who I believe are eligible in these tricky rules, and I'll give a little explanation as well. I'll start with receivers. We'll go Roy Roundtree and Kobe Hamilton. I think both of those guys are youngsters the team likes, but like we said earlier in the show, Sandenbacher, Tate, all the guys in front of them are showing well, and Cincinnati can only keep so many. I don't think Hamilton or Roundtree will have any issues clearing waivers to get to the practice squad. I think you'll have quarterback Zach Robinson there again if he is eligible, and, because he is fourth on the depth chart right now behind Josh Johnson and John Skelton. The good thing is he knows the offense, but the other two guys are playing better, and he's a developmental type player. I'll also put a running back on there. I'll put Boom Heron on there. I think eventually we're going to see Burkhead overtake him on special teams. I think I've already liked what I've seen more from Burkhead on the field than I had with Heron minus one big run against, I think it was third or fourth stringers. And the other thing you have to remember here, Burkhead is not going to make it through waivers to get to the practice squad, in my opinion. Boom Heron, I think he will. So I think that will also weigh into the decision as well. Defensively, I think you're going to see a guy like J.K. Schaefer get thrown on the practice squad in favor of Vincent Ray and taking a risk on a guy like Jason DeMonch. Schaefer spent time with Jacksonville, and he's now here. He's cleared waivers before. I don't think he's going to have any issues getting to the practice squad. I think a defensive tackle like Terrence Stevens or Von Mitoga is going to end up down there for depth on the chance that injuries strike the starters. If you look to the secondary, I'm imagining Chris Lewis-Harris and Ontario McCaleb are going to sneak on as well. They're not going to have issues actually making it to the practice squad unless McCaleb keeps showing very, very well on special teams, which we haven't seen enough of yet. And there's always that outside factor of maybe another team wanting to not use him as a corner like Cincinnati's trying to do. But I think they'll make it, and I think that's the right decision considering, at least for now, knowing this position, there's always so many injuries at corner, but at least for now, the depth in front of him is sound, and with him still learning the position, a year of development on the practice squad could do him wonders. Sean, your practice squad members?
Well, Chris, I've got some of the same guys as you, a couple different guys as well. I guess to preface my practice squad, two guys that you had on yours, I have making the team, which is Dan Heron and, oh boy, I don't remember who else was on your practice squad, actually, that I had making the team. But there was somebody else, I promise you that.
Paying attention. Kobe Hamilton?
Yeah. No, he's actually on my practice squad.
Terrence Stevens. There was probably a defensive tackle in.
No, it wasn't because Terrence Stevens is on my practice squad too. This is crazy. This is what happened.
So it was Schaefer.
It was Schaefer. That's it. J.K.
Yep.
Schaefer. He's making the team. Thanks, man. I'm only 30
Yeah.
and I'm already losing my memory this bad. This is terrible.
You're 30? Wow. Wheelchair.
I know. I'm old. So, all right. So here's my practice squad quick. A lot of the same members as you, Chris. A couple of different guys. I've actually got 4 offensive guys and 4 defensive guys here. Obviously, I'm with you on Zach Robinson. I think they want a quarterback on the practice squad. He's a developmental guy. He's eligible. It's a perfect fit right there. He sticks on the practice squad. No other team's going to go after him. I have Kobe Hamilton on there as well. Like you said, Chris, with the emergence of Sandenbacher and Brandon Tate this preseason, I mean, you've got to look at the talent and those guys can contribute more often in more phases of the game, because we got to include special teams here, than Kobe Hamilton can right now. He's going to be tough to sneak to the practice squad. He really will be. I have a feeling that it's going to be a Des Briscoe thing all over again. He's going to go to another team, and we're all going to be upset about it. But I've got him on there regardless. Third guy that I have on there, which actually may be a little bit of a surprise, is tight end Richard Quinn. I like, the fact that Richard Quinn can develop as, a tight end to use down the road, and you never know as far as injuries go. I mean, Orson Charles is moving to the fullback position, so if he stays there, supposing the Bengals cut John Connor or something like that, and then Alex Smith doesn't make the roster, you've only got really two tight ends that you can use there. So I think they need to keep one on the practice squad just in case for depth reasons. And then the other offensive guy I have is Roy Roundtree. I think Roundtree is a perfect guy for the practice squad. I think he's got a great future. I think you can coach him up and make him a solid wide receiver, but he's not there yet. I think he's a perfect addition to this practice squad. On the defensive side of the ball, Chris, I know you had him on there. I've got Terrence Stevens on there as well. I like what he's done as a defensive tackle so far, and, you can never have too much depth, especially with the questionable start of Devin Still and the injured Brandon Thompson right now. I've got Jordan Campbell on here as well because of the J.K. Schaefer, or my thought of J.K. Schaefer making the team. I think that's going to be another guy that might be a little tough to sneak aboard, but, that's a guy that I would aim for on the practice squad. Keeping on the defensive line, defensive end DeQuinn Evans. I like what he's shown so far. I think he'd be a guy to stash there for the season. Because obviously, as Mike Zimmer knows, you can never have too many pass rushers. And then lastly is Ontario McCaleb. It's going to be interesting to see if he'd be able to clear waivers, but, giving his transition from running back to cornerback, the small amount of time that we've seen him in special teams work, I don't think that really any NFL team has a really good idea of what he's capable of right now. So that could just be enough to squeeze him by the other 31 teams and, give him a spot on the practice squad for the year. So there you have it, my 8 guys.
Good stuff, my man. Bengals Central's listeners, that will wrap up our weekly mailbag segment. Follow at Bengals Central on Twitter and tweet us your questions throughout the week, and you'll appear live on the show like the guys here today did.
Absolutely. Also remember to check out our sponsor, Onnit.com. Simply type onnit.com/footballradio in your address bar. Receive 10% off your next purchase. Also check out Big Frog T-shirts at bigfrog.com/Cincinnati. We will have another contest for a free shirt coming up soon. So as always, stay tuned to the Bengals Central Twitter account for all the details. We'd like to thank everyone for tuning in this week. A very special thank you goes out to Dan Shonka of Our Lads Scouting Services at ourlads.com. Remember to check them out. It's a fantastic website full of useful information. And also Bengals rookie sensation, running back Giovani Bernard. Special thank you for joining us this week. Look forward to great things from you in 2013 and beyond. As always, be sure to scour the ProFootballCentral.com network for all the latest and greatest news from every NFL team. For Chris Rowling, I'm Sean O'Donnell. Hooday.
The following podcast is a part of the Pro Football Central Podcast Network. Check us out at ProFootballCentral.com.
Tonight is back in the orange and black. See the natty on the map, baby, tell me where you at. In the jungle, Hooday, bringing it back to the jungle. Every game day, yeah, the jungle's back. Got the natty pack in the orange and black. We're stacked to the track, so I'm back behind long work, chugging down cases in a can brewed in '88. Hooday, Super Bowl, spirit of the icky shuffle. Feel it rumble through the king of the jungle. Thunderous roar, he will soar across the river to the Newport shore. The Fountain Square, the great American ballpark. Down at the banks above the riverfront graveyard. The Paul Brown Stadium, the Nat is awakened. And we're making a statement to the rest of the nation. Cincinnati's back in the orange and black. See the natty on the map, baby, tell me